Some of the very oldest human history on our planet can be found in what is today modern-day Turkey. Evidence of ancient people have been found in many forms here, ranging from 27,000-year-old footprints to the remains of what might have been the world's first cities. The first civilizations were from Anatolia, an area which covers parts of Turkey today, and throughout ancient history, great wars were fought here over resources, religion, and territory. One of the most intriguing archaeological sites Turkey has to offer is Çatalhöyük, a mound in the country's Konya province which was created as a result of human activity over the course of many years. For over 1,000 years, this mound flourished as a bustling settlement, perhaps the very earliest city in human history. In today's video, we will be exploring the history behind this spectacular World Heritage Site from its early beginnings to its ultimate fall. Sit back and relax as we take you through time to discover Çatalhöyük, one of the world's earliest urban settlements. Çatalhöyük first came to the attention of modern human beings in 1958, when James Mellart, a famed English archaeologist and author, excavated the region with his team. This was the first of what would become several expeditions to the region over the course of the next few years. On his first visit, Mellart was amazed to discover more than 150 individual rooms and buildings in the mound, which sat on the plains of southern Turkey. Remarkably, many of these rooms' walls were decorated. Elaborate murals and paintings adorned them, often depicting religious figures and portraits. The significance was noted immediately, and plans were made to return to the area to learn more. Between 1961 and 1965, James Mellart returned with his team periodically to further excavate what was clearly a sprawling ancient settlement. Astonishingly, a further 18 layers of buildings were discovered over the course of these visits to the area, which revealed just how important this settlement was while it was inhabited. It was revealed that during the time Çatalhöyük was occupied by the ancient peoples of Anatolia, it was built upon again and again, higher and higher each time. The deeper Mellart's team dug, the older the artifacts uncovered became. Those at surface level were from 5600 BC, while the ones at the bottom dated back to an incredible 7100 BC. While these expeditions were ongoing, trouble was brewing. Mellart would be involved with the Dorak affair, a scandal concerning several archaeological artifacts from the ancient Turkish Yortan culture which had gone missing. The Turkish media began to accuse Mellart of stealing these artifacts with intent to sell them on in Western Europe, reportedly having identified him near to the location they were stolen. While the case remains unsolved to this day, Mellart would be banned from participating in Çatalhöyük's future excavations as a result of pressure from the media and the general public. He would later be permitted to return, but on the condition he would act solely as an assistant. Work on the site came to something of a halt following the Dorak affair. Ian Hodder, an archaeologist working with the University of Cambridge in England, would be the next to officially work on Çatalhöyük in 1993, where he developed his theory of post-processual archaeology. Currently, the site is being excavated by Ali Umut Turkcan from Turkey's Anadolu University. Çatalhöyük was first constructed and settled in the Neolithic era, or New Stone Age, a time before the advent of metalworking technologies and recorded history. Up to 8,000 people are believed to have inhabited the settlement at its peak, which would have resembled a large town or small city by modern standards. When it was first settled, the citizens of Çatalhöyük were nomadic hunter-gatherers, like much of the rest of the world. These people would have lived on the plains of Anatolia hunting wild animals for generations before finally settling down at a site that would provide an abundance of resources and food types. Over the course of Çatalhöyük's occupation, its citizens slowly began to develop new technologies. Knowledge about wild plants soon led to these people domesticating crops, which in turn led to the domestication of wild goats, sheep, and pigs that could reliably produce a steady stream of food. Çatalhöyük did not work like a modern town or city in the sense that there were no roads or even pathways. Its inhabitants would instead traverse the tops of their dwellings, entering and exiting them via holes in their rooftop, climbing down a ladder to reach their living areas. While they would spend much of their private time inside their buildings, much of what took place in the city happened on the rooftops. Communal facilities, ovens, stockpiles, and workshops were constructed atop the flat roofs of these dwellings, and it was here that technologies were developed, ideas were passed around, and gods were worshipped. There appears to be no class-based system or hierarchical structure evident in the bodies and buildings found at Çatalhöyük. This was a community that appeared to work together, sharing responsibility across the settlement to ensure the wider success of the populace. Some of Çatalhöyük's people have been discovered at the site, telling us a great deal about who they were and how they lived. When somebody living in the settlement died, they were buried underneath the floors of the houses. If the deceased was a child, they were typically buried with jewelry and painted with ochre. This reverence of deceased children is thought to perhaps point towards Çatalhöyük's society becoming more reliant upon the immediate land they had settled on, holding fertility and the children who would grow up to support the settlement in high regard. It would not be as easy for a large town such as Çatalhöyük to up sticks and return to a nomadic lifestyle if something went wrong and the population could no longer be supported. In several instances, the skulls of the deceased were removed from their skeletons and decorated with plaster and markings to be stored in the house. As morbid as this sounds to modern humans, this was perhaps an ancient way of preserving the memory and lives of their lost loved ones. Think of it in the same way as hanging a photograph on the wall of somebody you have lost. If Çatalhöyük is known for one thing, it is art. This early settlement has, throughout its time being studied by archaeologists, produced enough art to last an enthusiast a lifetime. Not only is much of it intriguing and intricate, but many of these artifacts allow us modern humans to peek into the lifestyles and beliefs of those who created them. Some of the most common pieces of art discovered from the settlement are figurines made of fired clay. Typically, these show early recreations of humans and animals and have been found in the walls of houses, communal ovens, shrine-like abandoned structures, and pits. One of the most famous figures, the seated woman of Çatalhöyük, shows the headless body of a large woman sat between a pair of big cats. It is thought to have been sculpted around 6000 BC, and the head has since been restored. It follows the trend of many prehistoric sculptures which tend to depict the nude bodies of large women. These Venus figurines are theorized to represent a mother or fertility goddess, but may alternatively be simple portraits. The inhabitants of Çatalhöyük also had a taste for painting. Paintings are abundant across the ruins of Çatalhöyük and were amongst the first features of the site that drew James Mellart in to excavate it in the first place. On the interior and exterior of Çatalhöyük, paintings adorn most of the walls, showing everything from simple zigzag patterns to elaborate reconstructions of people and animals. Paintings of ancient Anatolian hunters chasing bulls lined the walls of homes, perhaps denoting successful hunts or achievements of those who lived within. Some animals shown in these paintings are either locally or entirely extinct today. Some images show leopards, which are only ever spotted in Turkey on extremely rare occasions today, while others show aurochs, an extinct species of large wild cattle. Some images are slightly more unsettling. One building was shown to have been painted with images of vultures descending from the skies towards the headless figures of people, likely an artist's impression of death and the beliefs surrounding it. Animals were incredibly important to the ancient inhabitants of Çatalhöyük, and many homes featured their remains mounted on their walls. These consisted of plastered skulls once belonging to wild bulls installed in living quarters. These were often painted red with ochre and may have had religious significance. Sometime around the 7th millennium BC, Çatalhöyük was abandoned. Its people left the region, opting to settle elsewhere, and everything that had been constructed, created, and buried there remained where it was, left to the test of time. What could have caused this when it was seemingly going so well for the ancient folks of this incredible settlement? Climate change is thought to have played a major part. Towards the end of Çatalhöyük's occupation, there seems to have been a major shift. The area surrounding the settlement changed from being seasonally flooded with rainfall to a much drier environment. Initially, this would have increased the amount of farmland that was available to Çatalhöyük's inhabitants, letting them grow their crops without the risk that flooding would destroy the harvest. This shook things up for the community. With more domesticated produce available, the citizens of Çatalhöyük began to rely less upon each other for survival. Hunts and community celebrations are thought to have become more infrequent, which in turn led to societal problems. Before the rise of Çatalhöyük's dependence on agriculture, there was no hierarchy, no pecking order, no inequality. The only power, so to speak, was held by those who held positions of religious importance, or those who would organize community gatherings and feasts. With the decline of community reliance, certain groups of citizens in Çatalhöyük began to hoard food and wealth, holding it above the heads of those who had comparatively little. These citizens in turn began to gain access to better homes, which were larger and constructed with more exotic, valuable materials. This led to unrest within the settlement. With the developing hierarchical social structure, many citizens of Çatalhöyük began to leave, splitting off into individual villages in the surrounding plains, away from those who would seek to put a limit on their lives. By around 6000 BC, there was nobody living here anymore. While Çatalhöyük may not be a functioning settlement today, there is much that can be learned about ancient life from the multitude of fascinating artifacts within. Çatalhöyük has provided us with incredible insights into the art of the ancient world, as well as showing us architectural techniques that are very different to our own. Perhaps, however, there are lessons to be learned for the future from this ancient settlement. Ultimately, inequality put an end to this society, something that is rife in the world today. To avoid the fate suffered by this once proud community, perhaps we should reconsider some aspects of our own.